I live here now. All this and more coming up on This Week in Retro.
High-resolution color graphics.
This land of high technology.
The revolution in technology that made the information age possible.
Those kids are not afraid of computers.
The Type-In turns 50.
It's not Street Hawk.
Oh no, more Lemmings.
All this and more coming up on this week's show. Up-to-date news for out-of-date tech.
Hello.
Hello.
I'm Dave.
Hi, Dave. I'm Jason.
Hi, Jason. I'm Chris.
Excellent.
I'm guesting today by very special request is none other than WhatHoSnorkers. Welcome to the show, James.
Hello all, how's it going?
I never call you James.
No, that's my meat name. I put my cyber name, WhatHoSnorkers.
Hello, Snorkers. Snorkers is a wonderful person. I love his videos. He mostly, in fact, almost exclusively bases his videos on the wonderful Spectrum, where he usually takes a type-in, and he turns that type-in into a kind of review. He'll do a bit of fancy dress to suit it as well, which is always tremendous fun. And he will snorkify it. Most often, he will improve the game. He will fix things. He will add things to it. He'll make it look better. It's always a good trip down the Spectrum Avenue when Snorkers is there. Thank you very much for joining us.
It's a pleasure.
How are you, Jason?
I'm doing excellent, and I'm glad that we stumbled into something that's right in James's wheelhouse today.
Yeah. Did we stumble into it, or did you pick it on purpose?
It wasn't. I mean, I didn't make the history happen on purpose, but I knew what was up.
Good. Well done. Well done. Jason's story suits Snorkers down to a T. A bit of news for me this week. I have a new kitten, and you may, if you're watching the show, see the kitten in the background. I'm not sure how Arthur, which is the kitten's name, I'm not sure how well-behaved Arthur will be if he will be disturbing us and turning off my microphone, but we'll see. Chris, good week?
Yes. Yeah, not too bad. Yeah, can't complain.
Did you come third in any tournaments this week?
No, I'm in a high school competition on RoboCop from an online group I'm in, the arcade version. So MAME, again, that MAME cab, I'm on it every evening, Dave, without a word of a lie. Every evening, home from work, smash a game, whatever high school challenge I'm involved in. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I love it.
I want to see that training montage. I want to really see you working out, building up a sweat at that MAME cab.
I'll have to do that one time, yeah. Yeah. When I get ready for the Street Fighter 2 comp, yeah.
Train walking really slowly for RoboCop.
Yeah.
Shall we go into the stories? We've got a full roster this week. Shall we get right in?
Love to.
Yeah, let's do it.
On you go, Jason. Get stuck in.
My dearest Tabitha, I write to you on the day of my greatest triumph. It is done, and the moment could only be sweeter if you, my darling, and little Griselda and Mortatron were here to share it with me. I have given the world its first ever type-in computer game. They just flick the switches and the panel lights up, Tabitha. Oh, I look forward to many more happy years with you and our beautiful family. But if I die today, I will die forever happy. Yours faithfully, Dean. This story submitted by Grant Me Strength with a needed assist from Electric Pause, more from FX Eon, and it's the 50-year anniversary of what we think is the first ever type-in video game for home computers. That is a source code listing that is expressly designed to be duplicated, distributed, and then typed in by a home computer user. It's called Kill the Bit by Dean McDaniel, and the one-page source code dates it in May 1975, which truly is the earliest days of personal computing. The game is for the Altair 8800, generally considered the first personal computer. It's just 24 bytes of pure Intel 8080 code. And, well, since this is the Altair we're talking about, type in luxury. We used to work 20 hours at mill, then flick tiny metal switches at 1:30 in morning until our fingers bled if we wanted video game. Because keep in mind, oh, you like that, did you? Good. Good character work this episode. Because keep in mind, the Altair shipped with neither display output nor a keyboard. If you weren't one of the few who could afford a terminal or a teletype to hook up to it, all you had for input and output were lights and switches on the front panel. McDaniel's Kill the Bit game is simple. A light travels across the control panel. If you flick the switch under the light at the exact moment, you win. If not, more dots crawl across the display and you need to extinguish them all. It doesn't sound like much, but it's a reminder that for the first several years of home, microcomputing, people spent a great deal of time and energy just figuring out what to do with these things. So from these humble origins, publishing games and utilities as type-in programs became quite the industry. And at a time when modem communications were slow and expensive, disk media also costly and fragile, type-in listings were a cost-effective way to distribute programs far and wide. So there were monthly magazines as well as books that would help teach you programming with heavily annotated listings, or just set you up with a good game or handy word processor ready to roll if you were willing to put some sweat equity in on the keyboard. And there were even like choose your own adventure style books designed around typing in and playing a mini game before progressing, like this micro adventure novel I have right here. Anybody have good memories of type-ins?
No.
Nothing but good memories.
James, yeah, what's the poll for you for the type-ins?
There's as when I was a kid, we bought a second-hand ZX81, which came with some tapes and a load of magazines. Loading tapes took ages and often didn't work, but it did eventually work. But it's like, yeah. Or we had these little type-ins and these magazines full of exciting games that you could just enter. And then you had things like the Usborne books, which were full of exciting games, which were very, very simple, but came with, I'm showing on the screen, the Starship Takeoff, a very simple 1K game, which essentially is a guessing game. You have to enter some numbers to see if you win or not. But there's a story behind it, involving you've crash landed on an alien planet. You need to take off, but if you don't guess it right within 5 moves, the aliens will capture you.
I was about to say. So hang on, you didn't want to wait for a tape to load, so you found it quicker to type in on a ZX81 keyboard.
Oh yeah.
Okay, right. No further questions, Your Honour.
What we found was if you typed in a 1K game, it would eventually, you get it right. Whereas if you'd loaded, let's say, Rocket Man was on the ZX81, wonderful game, best game on there, with a RAM pack fitted, if you got it to load on the third attempt, you'd start playing it and then you'd RAM pack wobble.
Oh, yeah.
So 45 minutes of good. Whereas, you can type in a 1K game, RAM pack taken off. I'm not using the RAM pack, thank you.
Oh, true.
And you can have a bit of fun with it.
I remember on my Amstrad CPC typing in games, and they never worked. They just never worked. I didn't have the patience for it. I had, I think I got into it a little bit behind the curve on type-ins. I'm not sure when the type-in peaked, but I feel by the time I was using my Amstrad in 1986, type-ins maybe had peaked by then.
I think the UK magazines were shifting away from them before we were here in the US. That's my general observation. Yeah. No matter where you were, some really remarkable software was published in type-in form. Scott Adams was one of the first game publishers ever to put his source code out there in the public in the form of the Pirate Adventure, as published in Byte magazine. And there was even a variant of Colossal Cave Adventure that showed up over many, many pages in Creative Computing. And now a lot of people out there, including Dave, had frustration with type-in programs not working correctly. They'd crash out with errors or just not run at all. Occasionally, programs would be published with bugs. More often, though, it was some issue entering the game. And that's because type-ins didn't always have the shot in the arm they got in 1983, when some publishers figured out how to use on-screen checksums to protect against those nasty typos. You'd enter a line of code, hit return, short number appears on the screen. It's supposed to match a number in the magazine, next to the line you just typed, which really improved the quality of entry quite a bit. It's unclear who did those checksums first. The kind of general Wikipedia consensus is that it's the automatic proofreader from Compute magazine. But to find out more about the business of type-ins for this episode, I did manage to get the attention of longtime Compute magazine editor Tom Halfhill. There's a Facebook group that's dedicated just to classic computer magazines, and a lot of the participants were the editors and writers that were such a mainstay of those in the 70s and 80s. So Tom told us that selecting those programs was a really serious business, to the extent that publishers were keeping full-time programmers on staff that would test the programs, bug fix, or even do large-scale rewrites when necessary, adapt the games to different basic formats when they were published in multi-format magazines. Tom also told us that to make programs easier to enter, Compute developed those automated methods of converting things like control characters used in BASIC programs. If you've ever spent time in, say, Commodore BASIC, you'll see that there's a lot of these control characters that move objects around the screen and stuff like that. They had something that would boil them down to something human readable that then got formatted for the Epson MX80 printer, and then that would be dropped directly into the magazine's layout to make them easier to enter. Tom also told us that one of the biggest challenges they faced was the real risk that they would pay an author to get the rights to a program on acceptance, when the program was submitted. But by time the program was ready to publish months later, the demand for the machine it was for had plummeted. And that happened to them multiple times for things like the TI-99-4A, Timex Sinclair here in the Americas. Ohio Scientific had some personal computers that happened with. There's a lot of good discussion out there. It's a public Facebook group, so we'll link to it in the comments and maybe keep that discussion going. So if you've ever looked down your nose at type-in programs, you've missed some great stuff. James, before we wrap up, anything that you would say kind of are the top 2 or 3 lights you've found in your later days of going through the type-in world?
So one of the best ones I've touched in was a game called Rat Catch. It's a little arcade game, entirely in BASIC, but you're 2 rats holding a bucket catching bricks that fall from the top of the screen. And that's all you do. And it starts out slow, and as you collect bricks, you build a wall, and of course the distance gets slower and slower, and it gets faster and faster and faster. It's quite it's an astonishingly simple game, but it just works really, really well. I also find Commodore 64 games, though, tough to type in because of the strange control characters, which make me very, very stressed.
Yeah, the Compute's listings were really good for that, but I have seen some listings that were not quite so appealing. But I personally, I wrote years of school papers on SpeedScript on my Commodore 64. I still routinely at expos, I'll put the Wizard of War, Descendants, Crossroads, and Crossroads 2 up on display at those shows on a Commodore 64. All those came from Compute's Gazette, the C64 magazine. Chris, anything else that jumps out at you?
No, well, as I said earlier, I never had a good experience with type-ins, and I loved programming in BASIC. Was never that good at it, but I liked tinkering and making the machine do what I wanted it to do. Did have a stab at making my own game, but it never came off. But I do remember type-ins from the Acorn Electron, which is the first proper computer we had, through to the Spectrum in the games magazines. I would always look for Space Invaders or a Space Invader clone. And I do specifically remember, I think it's for the Electron, one that boasted to be Space Invaders in only 10 lines of code. But each line was ridiculously long with commas separating all the commands. I mean, fantastic. But I typed in every single last thing, checked every dot, every comma, every quote, or so I thought. And I think every game I typed in was actually secretly called syntax error because that's the only thing I ever saw displayed on the screen when I typed run. But it's funny that, we started with a story about the ZX81 because I do remember, and it's the only ZX81 story that I remember, visiting somebody's house, some friends of my parents, whatever, they had kids and they said, oh, go and play with our boys on the computer, which was a ZX81. And all I remember was them sitting there going, what do you want to play? I probably said Space Invaders. They pulled out this book, flicked through some pages, and spent, however much time, probably an hour or 2, typing in code, and then it was time to go home. So, again, the only thing I saw on the screen was syntax error. So there we go. That's, nothing more to add to the discussion from me, I'm afraid.
So I did get a few of the Usborne books. And I got them from the local library, and they were tatty when I got them because I think they were maybe 4 or 5 years old at that point. But I did get this, which I think what I'm going to hold up is I feel it's type-in games, even though you didn't have to type them in. It's something called Cascade 50, and this particular one is Cassette 50. I had the Disc 50, and I've got it somewhere in the house, and I can't find it. But the Cassette 50, the Cascade 50, is renowned. It has a terrible reputation, and I think an unfair reputation. It is a collection of 50 games on a single cassette, and as you might imagine, 50 games on a single cassette means the games are quite short. They are mostly, if not all, basic games. Mine was the Amstrad one, but I think it came out first on the Spectrum. But it was on very, very many British micros. It was a British company that did it, and they, I think they gave you a watch with it when you bought it. You got a cheap watch, a cheap calculator watch. They paid people a pittance for it, And the games were very, very basic in not just the language they were using, but nice, simple games. They were of a level of type-in games. It was like you had 50 type-in games already typed in for you, because you could edit the games, you could change things, you could, as I did, you could cheat, and you could make them do funny things, make them do entertaining things. I certainly didn't snorkify any of them. I didn't do any improvements to them, but I did hack about in them. And it did give me a little bit of experimentation with basic to see how things work. I do remember my favourite game out of all of them was called Trucking, which was you were the boss of a truck company in the USA, and you had to buy cargo and take it various different places. Think Elite without any of the fun bits. Snorkers, you've got experience with this, haven't you?
Yes, I typed in a game called Big Joe's Space Rig, which is basically space trucking. And of course, when I snorkified it, I started to make it more like Smokey and the Bandit, and also added in Charles Dance from the film Space Truckers, from this streamer-powered knob, which of course you've got to do, really. And Sally Field, that sort of thing, and moonshine that explodes in space.
I think type-ins were killed off by the cover disc or the cover tape. Yeah. I think once we had those, you bought the magazine, you got these little toys to play with that used to be type-ins that became there. But I don't know, type-ins give me this warm rush of nostalgia.
Yeah, if you're wondering what happened to them, for sure, the cover disc, the cover tape, that had a hand in killing them off. So did the 16-bit era. By the time you're on 16-bit machines, you want to take advantage of larger assets, more complex programs. And the fact that there's also not really a universal in-ROM BASIC the way that there were on most 8-bits, it just means that type-ins weren't particularly practical. So that's when you start to see the rise of cover discs, and that's kind of where that goes. But for 15 years or so, the type-in was a fantastic way to get home computer software on a budget, and it all started 50 years ago, probably with Kill the Bit.
We are sponsored this week, thank you very much, by Pixel Addict Magazine. Pixel Addict Magazine what are they, Chris?
They're a magazine about pixel addicts.
Fantastic, that's it, about addicts.
Yeah.
You inject pixels in.
I'm not sure they do, Dave.
No?
No.
Well,
I think they're probably into retro computing and games like us on multiple platforms.
Inject it into my veins anyway. They must be due a new issue. We're still in issue 28. They're about to go into issue 29, which I don't know anything about yet. But issue 28 is the one with the wonderful origin cover with various different things in it. I mentioned the James Hannigan is the cover story, the interview with him about chiptunes to cinematics, about the change from how it went from chiptunes to scores that would be good enough to be in movies. Lots in there. What's the URL for it, Snorkers? Yes!
Sorry.
Go on, what is it? Quick.
I can't remember. Sorry. Oh, hang on. Sorry, folks.
There you go. And that's where you want to buy it.
Sorry.
Pixel.addict.media.
Sorry.
Where you can buy the magazine as a PDF, you can get it delivered to your house. Thank you very much for sponsoring us.
Starcade 2084 submitted a story this week. Actually, I'm lying. They submitted a picture of a BMX bike from the 80s. Nostalgic, yes. Related to our niche, though. Stick with me, because, well, also yes. The BMX is a Raleigh Vektar, a BMX, I'd assume, built on the successful frame from the Raleigh Burner range, maybe, which in the UK were very popular for anyone who couldn't afford a real BMX like a Mongoose, myself included.
My BMX Raleigh Burner was a BMX, I'll have you know. It was a BMX. That's all I'll say in it.
Oh, no, 100%, yeah. But because we couldn't afford a Mongoose. No, the Raleigh Burner was fantastic. Anyway, the Vektar... it had white mag wheels, which you had to have mag wheels back in the day if you wanted to make friends, that is, because spokes were so from the 1970s. And this one had so much more than just the mags. It even had matching white plastic mud guards, front and back, and it had this very angular space-age design. And the angular design continues with more white plastic fairing covering the crossbar. So Raleigh had taken a nice mid-range BMX and added a ton of plastic, weighing the poor thing down like a lead balloon, making it useless for stunts. Why? And why am I still talking about a bike on a tech show? Stay with me. all that unnecessary plastic was there for a reason. And when I tell you what was in it, remember, this was released in 1985. The plastic on the crossbar was actually housing a control panel for a screen and an onboard computer. Promotional material from the time reads, Vektar is a revolution in riding and integrated design that brings street machines into tomorrow's world. And it goes on to detail in the promotional image that I found on another promotional image that I found, which I'll also link to in the show notes, of how it comes packing a computer module, an AM radio, and a sound synthesizer. Yeah, because you want that on your bike, right?
I'm trying to imagine what it actually did, because I don't know, and what the actually marketing said. Is it a little device that's an AM radio because that was the cheapest they could do, and a sound synthesizer is one of those devices that goes pew, pew.
Essentially, you've hit it. Yeah,
Right.
That's exactly what it did. But as a kid, that's great, right? Yeah, you know, police bike sounds, machine gun sounds, all of that. Yeah, that's what you need to be the best bike owner among your mates. And I didn't know this until covering this story, but what you could also do is you could buy the bike with no electronics, which was cheaper, and then you could add the modules over time. And there was also a black version, and I never saw that one back in the day. I didn't even see a picture of it. The only black one I was aware of was the smaller bike, which was the Street Wolf, which Neil's got one of those in the cave. I've seen that. I remember that being black, but that one had a lot less functions than the Vektar. The radio, I mean, AM, it should have been FM, but anyway, we know what a radio does. Sound synthesizer we've just discussed as well. So let's concentrate on the computer module. Again, remember, this is 1985 and this is on your BMX, so it's going to sound lame, but at the time, this was cool. It's not mind-blowing, but it allowed you to check your speed, distance, and riding time. That's what it did.
That's impressive.
Cool. It was cool for the time. It was cool for the time, right? Well, except what it didn't do, you know, this was everything a kid needed, except, and I guess what it was trying to do is it was, because everybody remembers Knight Rider, you probably remember A-Team, Airwolf. There was also Street Hawk. Do you guys remember Street Hawk? So think Knight Rider in a motorbike form factor. This was Street Hawk without pedals, right? So this thing was cool. And it did everything you wanted except ride like a BMX, because, of course, with all that extra junk, it was too heavy. It was too easy to break as well. And there are reports now that basically if it got left out in the rain, which, of course, every bike in the UK was left out in the rain, then the electronics would die a horrible death because of the water. So, guys, maybe I did watch too much Street Hawk or Knight Rider or Airwolf, but did you, like me, want something like this back in the day so you could be better than every other kid on the block? Did you lust after having a computer on your bike or your scooter or your skateboard? What else did you want it to be able to do? Jason?
Yeah, I was not cool enough to be a BMX kid. I was just not daredevil enough. But when this story came up, I had just for some other reason been thinking about, you guys remember that hype from 1999? There was like a couple weeks when they were saying Bill Gates is about to introduce the world to the digital dashboard. And like 1999, you know, things were really popping. You had broadband, you had, you know, like advances, you had 3D tech. And I'm like, this might actually be happening. We might really get kit. And all it turned out he was talking about was charts and graphs for business, dumb stuff. Now we actually have shiny digital dashboards in cars, and I don't care anymore. I feel like that guy, bear with me on this reference, the guy that hits on Trudy Campbell in Mad Men who says, I want you now, I don't want you old. I wanted digital dashboards then. I don't want them now that I'm old.
I'm going to be a car nerd again, because that does occasionally happen with me. Way before 1989, the Nissans had fantastic digital dashboards in the ZX, the Z31 300ZX. Beautiful digital dashboards. Anyway, so way before Bill Gates was spewing that, yeah.
But I remember I was driving in my friend's car, and he had his speedometer was numeric, like a digital watch.
Oh yeah,
brilliant! It's beautifully styled. How fast am I going? I'm doing 60. Brilliant. None of this needle, but no, needles are old fashioned. We got digital readouts, and bar charts and stuff.
Yeah,
my car does do something that I think cool. If I put it into dynamic mode, so there's kind of sports mode and all the rest of it, but if I put it into dynamic mode where it's more responsive and so on, the dashboard is all digital. The dashboard changes. It changes from the kind of the normal speedometer and rev counter, and it goes red. and it swaps the rev count and the speedometer round, and it's great. It's great. Yeah.
Anyway, carry on, Jason.
No, I now Dave's pulling me back in. Like, ooh, that'd be like driving a submarine. That's good stuff. Yeah. No, it looked like we were all going to get it, but I think that also, like what you're saying, if the speedometer and all that worked, that's pretty good. Like we're pretty spoiled now. We've all got hyper accurate satellite aware pedometers. They're a dime a dozen. You'll get them anywhere. But at the time, if that stuff really worked and you could snap it on your bike, that'd be good stuff.
Like, seeing the pictures of it reminds me of Rocky IV, the training montage, where you got Rocky outside in the snow, then you got Ivan Drago, all the high technology and all the digital readouts and injections and numbers going up, and that's the sort of this is proper exercise. None of this old fashioned tough of the track Alf running around. No, you're proper digital stuff, sensors, computers is the future.
I had a burner. I had a Raleigh burner, and we all had Raleigh burners. We got them before the computers, and it's only today that I've realised that there was a cartel in my street. Our parents must have been in cahoots and agreeing what we got for Christmas, because for some reason the two streets, there was a street and another street joined onto it, two cul-de-sacs, and between them there was about 30 kids from maybe, I don't know, 50 houses at most. In fact, not as much as that, maybe 35 houses. There was maybe 30 kids. And there was 15 kids within a year or two of my age. So there was loads and loads of us growing up together. I think it was just because it was all newly built houses and the same young families bought them. And we all got the same presents. So we all got Raleigh burners for Christmas one year. And if we didn't get them for 1 year, we got them the next year. So over the space of maybe 2 Christmases, virtually everyone got the same bike. And then later, we all got an Amstrad CPC. And then later, we all got an Atari ST. Now, not all of us, but most of us got it. And the parents must have been in a cartel where they talked to each other about what to buy for Christmas. And it meant that I don't really remember much jealousy, apart from 3 different kids. There was 3 kids that were jealousy of. One guy's dad worked in the oil rigs and he came back with all the toys in the world. And another guy's somehow came back with crossbows. Crossbows were fun. The parents didn't like that. But other than that, we all had the same toys.
Mm.
Is it possible they were involved in fencing stolen goods? Maybe that oil rig was loading some things offshore?
Well, do you know, it's not entirely impossible that the parents were getting stolen goods. I don't think it's likely. I think it's unlikely, but it's not entirely impossible that someone said to all the parents, the kids want a Raleigh burner, it's £100, but I'll give you, if you all buy one, I'll give you one for 70. I don't know. But we all got the same present, and it solved an awful lot of problems about jealousy because we mostly all had the same things. So I do remember one thing about my Raleigh burner, and that is, and mine was the original. I looked today to find out what Raleigh burners there were, so mine was the red and yellow original one. And I remember the bike hit something. I think it might have been the curb. And the bike stopped suddenly. And little Dave didn't stop suddenly.
Oh, no.
Little Dave went soaring over the handlebars. Little Dave landed on his head.
Ooh.
Oh.
And went to hospital with a split skull.
Ooh.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
You still have a souvenir from that up there?
My head's too lumpy to tell. Maybe don't do the zoom in and look. Don't do it. So that's my memories of Raleigh burner. But I loved it. We all loved going on our bikes and just going places, speed of light.
Yeah, that's what we did. Similar to yourself, Dave. I mean, group of friends, and we all had Raleigh burners. Only one that had the mongoose, and he could do the biggest, best jumps. But he was a little bit older than us as well. And similar to your story, Dave, he had more. His dad had more money than our dads, so he had a bike. But yeah, I love stories like this. I'm really glad. I almost didn't cover it because it's a bike, not a computer, but I just love this. It's a single image, and it's opened up memories for all of us here, and then that opens up a discussion. And the promotional image that I found whilst doing further research, and I've put a link in the show notes, that's special to me as well in a way, because Not just because the other BMX on it shows an Andy Ruffles special, which was also very Raleigh, named after, obviously, Andy Ruffles and endorsed by him. And he was a famous, in the UK anyway, a famous BMX rider in terms of doing freestyle and stuff. I think he also did track stuff as well. And I actually met him in my hometown where he did this exhibition thing in a half pipe and that. And I got his autograph, first autograph I ever got off someone. So that was a really big thing if you were into BMX scene back in the UK. It's not just because of that. It's because in the details, it actually tells you that you can buy the Vektar for as little as £214, which I think was actually more than the recommended retail price. But it also says that you've got payment options for paying it off over 20 weeks or 38 weeks. And I see some smiles there going on my other screen there, because that only came up in certain catalogues that most of our mums would have got hold of at some point so that they could buy things on what we called in our house the Never Never, where basically you couldn't afford to buy the item outright, so you convinced yourself you could afford to buy it at an inflated price over several weeks or months. And that's how we managed to afford some of these things in our house sales. So for me, finding that image is probably the exact same image that I spent many hours staring at the Vektar and having an argument with myself in my own head, because basically I knew it was a hunk of junk. I knew it was overweight and the gimmicks that it had weren't any good anyway, and it was covered in plastic that wasn't needed and it was going to break. But oh my God, it was cool.
I'd like to welcome on 3 new patrons. So thank you to Piero75, to Chris, and to Rob for signing on to become patrons for the show. Thank you very much for becoming official twirlers. Where can people go, Jason, if they want to become a twirler?
They should go to patreon.com/thisweekinretro.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for sharing those coins with us. And we do have an Australian arcade coinage mystery update. They were 20-cent coins that were the standard credit. We were told there's no such thing as an Australian quarter. By the time you get to the early 1990s, we're told that 40 cents was typical for an older game and 60 or more for a new one. Thank you to Vanderfall on the Twirler Discord and Craven Black 4211 on YouTube for being among the first to let us know.
I still have one question, though. We call them 10p's, and you called them quarters in the United States of America. What did they call the 20-cent coins in Australia? There's no way that they called them 20-cent coins.
So it seems like there's an antiquated term that calls it 2 bob, but by time the 80s came around, that wasn't in common parlance in Australia anymore, and they were just calling them 20 cents.
Because
the 2 bob is the old school name.
Yeah, 2 bob.
No more than I know. I freaking live it. I don't know.
Because when I was a kid, when I was at the younger age of the arcades were 10p, which was 2 bob.
That's right.
Because the old 2 shilling piece with King George VI on it was the exact same size. You could just put them in the machine. And those were 2 bob or 10p.
Yeah.
This is going to carry on for months, isn't it?
Yeah.
Good. Rouges.
Australian coiners. Yeah, and rouges. Antiques for Geeks, is that where we are now? Yep.
Yes.
Okay, he let us know that Time Extension followed up on Japan's Game Preservation Society crisis. We mentioned this in episode 218. A post there from founder Joseph Radon says that by bringing in another 400 new supporters, totaling about 160,000 yen per month, the institution is now on solid ground once again. So that's fantastic.
Saved.
Yep.
And there's a kind of follow-up on last week's chat about Sinistar and how hungry arcade machines were for coins. The YouTube algorithm served me an episode from a fairly new series from a guy called Cool Nerd Show, which he's called Arcade Economy. And in it, he takes a look at arcade machines to see how greedy they are. Although there's actually more to it. He does, it's a really good series. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And he goes through the game, where it came from, what was going on at the time. So he does a bit of a history, an exploration on the game itself. And then he talks about how many coins it took him to complete. So he plays the game until he completes it and then talks about how many coins it cost him. And to be honest, I'm quite surprised how little it did, because he was playing games like The Simpsons and Turtles and The Punisher, and he was getting through them a lot with a lot fewer coins than I would have expected. But I really enjoy watching it, so much so I watched all of them that he did. And the latest being, of course, the wonderful Golden Axe. So there's a link in the show notes to that playlist. It doesn't go back as far as games like Sinistar, and I have a feeling from what he said, he's probably not too interested in going back that far. I think his wheelhouse of games were the kind of late 80s, early 90s games, and that's what he'll stick to because that's what he enjoys. And I also don't really think you could do it with Sinistar because you can't complete it. Yeah, really interesting when we're talking about greedy games.
I think Gorf was one of the first greedy ones because you can insert more coins to get more lives.
Yeah.
That's all back in 1980.
Yeah. On to briefs, and Fiskett has let us know the sad news that Gail Wellington, former Commodore software products manager, has passed away. I think she ended up being vice president at one point. She had a significant role in the CD-TV, among other things, and Neil interviewed her as part of his Trash to Treasure series on it. So a sad loss there.
DJ Hoffman let us know about his release of Metal Gear for Mega Drive. It's a port based on his Amiga port, which was based on the original MSX2 release. It's available now on his itch.io page, and with support for standard as well as 6-button controllers.
Yeah, I watched them release that on Twitch. It was quite interesting.
Rowan Forrest submits a link to a video on an abandoned desktop music computer from 1985 from Korg, along with a Korg desktop module.
And there's a great little article from Shepo71 about, it's a BBC article about people using, and they say this word, I didn't say this word, ancient Windows computers, all sorts of things like CNC machines, mass transit, ATMs, etc. What's happened is someone's developed an industrial type machine or a single purpose thing, and it's used a version of Windows with it. And of course, that version of Windows eventually goes obsolete. But as long as it's not facing the internet, then you may as well continue using this version of Windows. Why would you need to change it if all it's doing is controlling this device?
And Spud by Night submitted an item that I'm assuming was designed to catch my game show loving attention. It's a look at Murphy's Micro Quizm from the early 1980s on Ireland's RTE1 station. It gave away Dragon 32s as prizes. It made extensive use of the BBC Micro within, including head-to-head game battles like those we Americans remember from Starcade. And we will include a link to a representative episode.
This week's top submitted story, well, I suppose we had better cover it. Mr. Lemmings himself has been known to listen, and we all have to pretend to like his game. And as much as I like winding up Mike, and Mike, if you're listening, you're I really, really like Lemmings. And as an explanation as to why anyone would understand why I'm swearing at him, if you get Mike to sign something, unless you are the most special person in the world, if you get Mike to sign something, he will be extremely offensive on it. Unless, as I said, you are Chris, who managed to get something signed without being offended on it. MBG, known as Dimitri in the real world, has done a nice, concise video on Lemmings. There's actually a lot to say about Lemmings, lots about the development process, and I think I've seen most of it. But Dimitri talks about how a bunch of Kogies, that's people from Dundee, made the game using an 8x8 sprite, which somehow managed to cram in lots of personality. And the truth is, I really, really like Lemmings. It's one of my favourite games. I want to wind up Mike by saying I don't like it, but I do like it. I love Lemmings. Something I don't remember being said about Lemmings is something I remember doing in the 80s. And it was doing these really complex stick figure drawings of them going through some kind of maze and being killed and on spikes and crushers and so on. And I didn't invent this. I'm sure lots of people did it. I'm sure it wasn't just in my school that people did it. But these little drawings, and it reminds me of Lemmings when I think about it. Because that's what Lemmings really is all these guys going through a maze and getting crushed. It's a clever little puzzle game. I'm sure people don't. There must be someone who doesn't know what Lemmings is.
Did you start drawing these figures shortly after you fell off your BMX, Dave?
I'll be drawing you later on.
Villain origin story.
Yeah.
Lemmings is a clever little puzzle game where these tiny little guys drop from a hatch and they walk forward, following the landscape, and will walk off cliffs. They will get killed by the landscape and burning fires and lava and so on in it. But you can give them tasks and they will mindlessly do the task. And by doing this, you can guide them and create a path to the exit. Let me know in the comments if anyone actually needed that explanation. Surely no one did. Each level is independent in Lemmings, and all you need to do is this is important, but all you need to do is pass the level to get the password for the next. It doesn't matter how well you do in the level, you get the password for the next, and that's all that matters. So it doesn't matter if you pass it by a lot or a little. And MBG does mention what people quite often miss out about Lemmings is the 2-player split screen mode. And it's really important because it's my favourite part of Lemmings, because I remember playing it against a guy called John Lamb, who's sadly no longer with us, and we'd commit war crimes against each other. We would do something called, if we managed to get it right, we'd create this thing called what we called a topping tunnel. And if you dig it just right, because my Lemmings came out facing one way and his Lemmings came out facing another, which meant their little feet fell on a slightly different pixel. If you dug a tunnel just right, then my Lemmings would land on the pixel from the same hatch and his Lemmings would go straight down this topping tunnel and to their death, and they would never survive. But we would do all these horrible things to each other. And because it was split screen, you could take your eyes off your own Lemmings to look to see what the other party was doing. Of course, you would then lose sight of what you were doing. It was frenetic. I absolutely loved it. And when people talk about Lemmings without talking about the 2-player, they're missing out so much. A key thing about it is that it doesn't matter whose Lemming it is that enters your exit portal. As long as it's a Lemming, you get the credit, so you can steal each other's Lemmings. It's amazing. Jason, was Lemmings a big deal in the USA?
Yeah, it really was. And not just on the Amiga and Atari ST scenes. I had friends down the street who had Lemmings on their 286 DOS PC with VGA. That was one of a handful of games that we played a lot of on that machine. Lemmings, Wing Commander, Joe Montana Football. Those are kind of biggies that we would just kill hours and hours on.
I was a big fan of Lemmings on the Sega Master System. I used to play a lot with my sister. And again, if you get bored, you just kill them all off and just oh no, and then they all explode.
Yeah, so there were multiple 8-bit ports of Lemmings. That's interesting. I'd missed the Master System one.
Oh, yeah, there's so many. And Mike Daly actually has ported it to other systems lately. He collects Lemmings now. He doesn't collect Lemmings. He doesn't get cages full of little furry things. He collects computer games editions of Lemmings. Yeah. But yeah.
Thinking about Lemmings also got me thinking about Angry Birds. So is there a formula where you take animals, you make them just human enough to be not as upsetting, and you inflict just enough exaggerated violence on them, and the result is a successful game?
It's a funny thing because I don't like being cruel to animals.
That's what makes them human enough that it's not as upsetting, right? You make them humanoid, so it's like, oh no, these are just these are dumb people, walking off the cliff and being blown.
Fine.
They're not nice, right?
Well, like worms, for example, you can blow. If it's real people dying horribly in a war, it'd be terrible. But worms, it's always a bit of a laugh, isn't it?
Well, Baldur's Gate 3 has a mode in it that you can play. It's the Dark Urge if you're in a particular origin character, and that involves being cruel to animals. And I can't do it. I won't. I cannot. I can't do it. I can't be cruel to animals in games. But Lemmings, oh yeah,
all day long.
War crimes, no problem at all. So Jason's hit on something. There's a point at which you anamorphize them. Is that right? I don't know. To the point where it's possible to be cruel to them, where you wouldn't be cruel to humans, and where you wouldn't be cruel to animals. So there you go.
Similar niche to zombies, really.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anyway, I absolutely love Lemmings. Even though, are you guys any good at Lemmings? Let me ask you this, because
completed it. Yeah, completed it.
Oh, really? No, serious?
Yeah.
Oh, it's just me then. I'm absolutely crap at it. I'm so bad even today. If I put more time in, I could be better. But I don't know. It's the kind of game. Well, for me anyway. Clearly, you guys are good at it, but for me, it doesn't accept me. It doesn't upset me. Sorry, the fact that I fail at a level because it's just fun seeing them perish. That's part of the fun. So it doesn't matter. This win-win as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, I've got one of the many Mike Daly signed copies, but I think mine is the most valuable in the entire world because, as Dave said, mine doesn't actually have any swear words on it. It just has his signature. I almost feel ripped off, but I mean, that's got to be rare, right? So I couldn't go, given we were covering Lemmings, without, again, thanking for Jacko for gifting me this mint copy and for Mike for signing it when I was over in the UK last year. Very, very grateful.
I wonder if there's a missed trick with Lemmings where there was a game mode potentially where you could be cruel to them, and that was the point of it. I don't know. The most variety of deaths while making sure none made it to the exit. I don't know. Lemmings was. That's why you don't do so well. Lemmings was an astonishing success for DMA Design. In other coverage I've seen of them, I think they knew it was going to be an absolute barnstormer before they released it, because I think they had demos out and it really hit the ground running. It sold absolute truckloads, sold like gangbusters, and it led to them being able to be big enough to make Grand Theft Auto. So these degenerates from Dundee made one of the best games ever, Lemmings, and then went on to make possibly the biggest franchise ever, Grand Theft Auto. GTA 6 has been talked about recently. I've seen the projection. I've seen what allegedly is a projection for revenue. It is astronomical, and all down to, I think, Lemmings. Now, don't listen to Dimitri. He says that the Amiga version is hands down the best version. Nonsense. Every version is good. Even the Commodore 64 gets a great port of Lemmings, very playable. The ST version is one I played, and it's the only one that flashes the drive light to let you know that you're about to run out of bricks when the builder's running. So obviously that makes it the best version. No, I played it on the ST and I loved it there. There are lots of great versions to play. I do have one axe to grind, though, about Lemmings, and nobody seems to talk about this. People complain that you can't identify the correct lemming to give a task to. So if you've got a pack of lemmings, you want one to build a certain direction or dig a certain way, you can't identify which one. But that's part of the game. That's part of the game. If you've let them bunched up, that's your fault. The task that you have as controller of the lemmings is to make sure that you assign the tasks in order so you don't end up with a mess of them and you're trying to frantically do it. It's part of the skill of the game. But I absolutely love Lemmings. It's a fantastic game, so well done to all of the Dundee people who made it, especially Mike Daly, who I actually don't hate. Now on to the question of the week. And last week we sent you the question, please name the scariest enemy you have faced in a video game. And I'm going to take us out of contest mode and we will see who has come up with the top suggestion. It is 88-bit, and he says, in Rescue on Fractalus, when you land to pick up a survivor and a Jaggy jumps up in front of your window. The first time that happened, I almost had a very non-crafty log. So Rescue in Fractalus is a fantastic game, a 3D game. An early 8-bit 3D game came out. I think the Atari 8-bit was the first version of it. And you would rescue people, but these green aliens would pop up on your screen and you had to react very quickly when that happened. Really very scary.
And tied for top, Antiques for Geeks gives us, go on, I'll say it, in-game purchase. The less cynical answer provided, I honestly think that Rex in 3D Monster Maze is scary. He waits patiently between games on the tape and the cassette. He's in your ZX81. He's silent. He's low res. He's still everything your 6-year-old imagination feared him to be.
Imaginary Swing 8606. He says, I would say Jason in Friday the 13th game, but Jason. I think everybody would last. Jason. Yeah, Jason.
Horrific. Yeah. Scary.
We've got one right here.
I'm brand.
Yes.
That's when, so America, side note here.
Yeah.
tons of American boys were named Jason in the 1970s. I haven't checked the stats elsewhere, but it spikes. It's depending on which stats you look at, it's the number 3 or number 4 name in the 1970s. And then Friday the 13th comes out and moms stop naming their kids Jason.
It's funny that.
Legit.
I think that happened with Damien as well.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But he also says, other than Jason, on a more serious note, it would have to be the Alien out of Alien Isolation for a more mature adult that made me jump a few times. Yeah, absolutely fantastic game. That is Alien Isolation.
Snorkers, have you got one?
Yes, there's a Seaworldliness 7525 who, in a similar vein, refers to the Commodore 64 Alien game when the alien suddenly appears and you lose a crew member. I'm guessing that's the Alien game, which is similar to the Mindscape one on the Spectrum, where you're wandering around the Nostromo and suddenly Alien turns up and people kill you.
Yeah.
But similarly, there's an Aliens game on the 8-bits where Alien suddenly appears on the screen, runs towards you and fills the screen, and then it cuts to static. And that's like, it makes you jump.
Yeah, that's one of the few games on an 8-bit that has the capacity to scare me. Scared me as a kid. It's eerie. It's got an atmosphere in it, which is really quite incredible for a game of that age. There are lots and lots of good suggestions. Shodan from System Shock says Chromatic Ore.
We did get a few answers to Chris's question of the week. Either that, or they were just telling us that a 47-year-old man was in fact the greatest enemy they'd faced in a video
DJ
game.
Hoffman says 47 male Salisbury.
Yep, that's the one.
Generation Pixel. We know him, Chris, don't we? We've met him. He says 52 male Kilmarnock. I'm answering Chris's question because I'm not scared of video game antagonists. Well, maybe Tonberry from the Final Fantasy series.
Sorry,
somebody's braver than us.
It took me a moment what you were even talking about, and I'm with you now. Yes.
Sarah talks about Descent. What a game. Tate loading error, says colony activity. Lots of good answers. Go to the subreddit if you want to submit a story or you want to read what the answers are. And do we have a question of the week for this week?
And the question of the week for this week, we talked about the type-in books. Dave showed off his Usborne book. We want to know what book was vital to your microcomputing enjoyment. You can check that out on reddit.com/r/thisweekinretro, the community question of the week.
And we will see you next week. Now, if anyone wants to know more about Snorkers, I would suggest that people watch a Snorkers video. What would you suggest, Snorkers? What's the most Snorkers of the Snorkers back catalogue?
I'll probably go with Indiana Jones, The Idol of Gold.
Oh, I love that one. Yes. I love that one.
It's a Spanish. It's a Spanish type-in. Basically, some bloke decided to write his own Indiana Jones game with 5 mini games. It was a good game. It had a title, it had a theme music, and then I snorkify it and I dress up a lot. Yeah,
that's a great video. We'll put that in the show notes. Thank you very much, Snorkers, or James, as I never call you, for coming on this week. I hope people do go and have a look. Your little niche of the internet is absolutely wonderful to go to. We will all see you next week. So it's goodbye from me. And the rest don't care.
We don't give a crap.
We were waiting for you to say your names. It's goodbye from Dave. It's goodbye from Jason. Yeah. It's goodbye from Chris.
Well, no, I don't need to.
We're just waving now. Let's just wave. That's what we do.
I'm waving. He's waving.
Waving at all the listeners. We always wave at them.
See you next week.
This Week in Retro was written and presented by Chris from 005 AGIMA, Jason from the Retro Adventurers, and Dave. It was edited by me, Duncan Styles. The podcast version of the show is available through your favourite podcast app, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And the video version is available on the This Week in Retro YouTube channel.
Join our community subreddit at r/thisweekinretro to suggest and vote on the stories we cover on the show. If you watch This Week in Retro on YouTube, please give us a like and subscribe to help us reach new viewers.
If you enjoy our show and would like to support it, then please check out the link to our Patreon page in the show notes or description. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time for more up-to-date news for out-of-date tech.